Our reading by Neil Gaiman. The day the saucers came. That day, the saucers landed. Hundreds of them, golden, silent, coming down from the sky like great snowflakes, and the people of the earth stood and stared as they descended, waiting, dry-mouthed, to find what waited inside for us, and none of us knowing it, we would be here tomorrow. But you didn't notice it because that day, the day the saucers came, by some coincidence, was the day the graves gave up their dead. And the zombies pushed up through soft earth, or erupted, shambling and dull-eyed, unstoppable, came toward us, the living, and we screamed and ran. But you didn't notice this, because on the saucer day, which was the zombie day, it was Ragnarok also. And the television screens showed us a ship built of dead men's nails, a serpent, a wolf, all bigger than the mind could hold. And the cameraman could not get far enough away. And then the gods came out. And you did not see them coming because on the saucer zombie battling gods day, the floodgates broke, and each of us was engulfed by genies and sprites, offering us wishes and wonders and eternities and charms and cleverness and true brave hearts and pots of gold, like giants fee-fo-fummed across the land, and killer bees. But you had no idea of any of this because that day, the saucer day, the zombie day, the Ragnarok and fairies day, the day the great winds came and snows and the cities turned to crystal, the day all plants died, plastics dissolved, the day the computers turned, the screens telling us we would obey, the day angels drunk and muddled stumbled from their bars and all the bells of London were sounded, the day the animals spoke to us in Assyrian, the Yeti day, the fluttering capes and arrival of the time machine day. You didn't notice any of this because you were sitting in your room, not doing anything, not even reading, not really, just looking at your telephone, wondering if I was going to call. I love Neil Gaiman. Last March, I was staying in a retreat center as part of a 2.5-day-long workshop I was co-leading. We were teaching about UU identity to religious educators and ministers. The poem we just heard by Neil Gaiman reminds me a little bit of one of those days. It was about 5 to noon, and I was sitting in my bedroom wondering if Huntington was going to call and offer me the candidacy. Giants could have fee-fo-fummed across my window, and I'm not sure I would have noticed. We all have that happen to us so often in our lives. We're waiting for the job offer that never seems to come, or college acceptance letters seem to travel at the speed of snails, or we're grappling with the possibility of having to accept that a serious illness may have just entered our lives, or our family. Everything else seems to go out of focus and we fixate on the thing that will validate us, or show us the way forward, or redefine the rest of our days. We're waiting for the map to unfold and make clear where our path will take us. But sometimes it's much less serious. Sometimes we get distracted by triviality, or get sucked into another person's opinion of us, or define our day by 1,000 small things. In a very real way, a million magical things happen every moment we are here to see them, whether we take note or not. So long as we're breathing, the seeming fantastical is right before us. Maybe not giants, fee-fo-fumming, but our kids' laughter, the love of a partner, the life that teems all around us. Breath itself is completely a miraculous gift we only notice when it's hard to find. When you hear me speak of reverence in my sermons, it's all of these things that I'm pointing to. It's the feeling of another sun rising through no fault of our own, and it's a feeling many of us experience toward God. It's one aim of religion to help us to come to a place where we can appreciate that subtle awareness without getting too caught up in defining it. In many ways, that's the core of the story we heard this morning about the awakening of the Buddha. There will always be 1,000 distractions, some small and some serious, but how we connect with a sense of reverence in our daily living will determine the depth of our life. It's not just a witticism for the spiritually enlightened or awakened. It's practical advice for daily living. I've heard from many of you prior to candidating week in April, and since then, that in many ways, our fellowship is exhausted. We've gone through so many transitions. I'm your third minister in 2 years, right? Your previous called minister ended his time with you dealing with health concerns, and your previous religious educator ended her time with you caring for her husband during his terminal illness. Many members had to step up to respond in loving and supportive ways. Some of you may have felt like you were all of a sudden employees of the fellowship to ensure that things continued to work. Thank you for that. Thank you for doing what you felt you needed to be done. Thank you for caring for your staff as best as you were able. And some of you are still likely completely wiped from the effort. For some of us, we might feel soul weary, that CPR for our spirits wouldn't be such a bad idea. The practical advice for daily living is that in times of change or stress or extra effort, we must be extra diligent to find room in our hearts for reverence still. Or we will burn out, and what we sought to nurture or protect will become a burden and we begin to wish we could just drop. And soon we may just drop it. We can avoid this by developing spiritual practices that draw us to experience a sense of gratitude in our lives. What might feel like a daily dose of CPR at first can transform into a healthy regimen. As a side note, if any of you checked out online on our website, the calendar, the graphic that Jennifer Sapel posted to our online calendar, the sermon's topic had basic instructions for CPR. Step 1, call 911. Step 2, press, like keep pushing, right? I might need a class again. And step 3 ended with the advice, don't hesitate, you can't do harm. For the meditators amongst us, the advice would sound like, hurry up, sit. In the months to come, we will focus on growing more opportunities for the discipline of spiritual practices. I know that we already have groups that meet for meditation and yoga through the week. And our religious education program is right now attending a yoga class. Historically, there were also circles that met, that I believe were called small group ministries. Is that right? Yeah? Some of you have been to them? We'll be growing more of those circles after September, where a group of 6 or 10 people can come together in the same group every month to reflect on the content of our services, to share, to go deeper, to be nurtured in community. And I'll be crafting each of those sessions in response to the sermons and what's going on in the world. If you're interested and have experience facilitating such reflection groups, give me a call or an email. We'll need some more people to help out. Also in September, I'm going to be starting a monthly Spirit and Practice group where we'll look at a different spiritual practice every month to kind of encounter them all. As I preached about covenant in April, I'll be inviting our committees and task forces to begin their work this year with building covenants together. The practice of living with respect to our relationships and our commitments is also a discipline that's not always easy, but it's central to our faith. We're experimenting this month with including silent candle lighting during our service so that we can come together more in ritual. I hope to continue to include our children and youth in our time of meditation and prayer. As a religious community centered in shared spiritual practices, it is vital that we raise our children to appreciate these practices as well, or they will not be here when they are too old for children's religious education. They may not be here for high school. It's also crucial that we share our sacred practices with all our ages, because as a community, we are a fellowship of all ages, and our practices should reflect our identity and our values. I noticed just from body movement today that our kids don't know the hymn that we sing every week, Spirit of Life. That's so important to so many of us, and it's an alien song to them. We're not teaching them that. You will often note that with all of our spiritual practices, I will often use different ways of talking about the same things. This morning alone, I've already said prayer, meditation, reverence, and gratitude. Some of us, this is a given, and for others, it can be a challenge. Openness in times of change can be a discipline all in itself. I'm forever less concerned in the details of creed as I am in the experience of meaningful practice. Or as Nina shared in her moment of witness this morning, that there's not one answer, there are many truths. I hope that we can each be renewed by our Sunday services, each in our own way. At times of silence can be a breather when we need them, and times of movement and ritual can energize. Where one thing may not speak to us, may we learn to appreciate how it very well may be speaking to the person sitting next to us. Robert Latham, an author and a UU minister, talks about this in a slightly different way. He suggests that the old trinity of Unitarian thought that we're grounded in freedom, reason, and tolerance is probably not the best matrix to be relying on. To put it briefly, saying we're free implies anyone who has not joined our faith, or any faith, isn't themselves free. It's not a statement that's very generous or spirit of the traditions. Where reason will always be important to us, it only touches upon one half of our mind, and maybe less depending on how much you value compassion and empathy. And tolerance, try to think of the last time you said out loud, "I am so grateful that you tolerate me." I meant that. No one likes being tolerated. Does anyone like being tolerated? Let me just make sure I don't speak for all of you. But two people like being tolerated, right? Okay. Yeah. So okay, it's a strong argument in Latham's case, right? Latham also asks us to measure our faith by another standard. He suggests openness, mindfulness, and reverence. Openness, mindfulness, and reverence. I've talked at length about the first and the third already, whereas Austin went into more detail about mindfulness, although she didn't use the word in our story this morning with the Buddha. Mindfulness is a general awareness of what is going on before us, blended with our more intuitive core. This triad is a spiritual practice in itself. It can directly help us in times of stress and change, whether the matter is frivolous or life-altering. A practice of openness can save us from some arguments with friends, fellow congregants, or, maybe on a good day, our families. It's hard to assume good intentions with all the world. It's hard to accept that there might be another way of seeing something when our feelings have been hurt, or we've been asked to change some long-standing practice. But in religious community, at least in our UU tradition, we are called to be open. We don't necessarily need to change our minds, but our faith demands of us that we don't come to the table with our minds made up, and that we do so knowing that we're there in relation to the people around us. We're always in relation to the people around us. The practice of mindfulness asks us not to do 1,000 things at once, and for some of us, myself included, not doing 1,000 things at once is a really hard thing not to do. It also involves allowing our reason to dance with our hearts when we get lost in our emotions to the point where we can't see the road before us, or we endlessly fidget with all the options ahead of us, most guilty of. Mindfulness calls us back to a place of centeredness. We can appreciate the feelings and the challenges without losing our place in the world. We already have a place in our world. The struggles and challenges before us do not define our value. We already have value. A practice of reverence may be the most countercultural act we can ever make in our consumer-driven world. Messages, media, public pressure, and finances all urge us to gain the next thing, to desire that what we can't have over the gifts before us, to be consumers in our world rather than citizens. Reverence informs us that all of this is fleeting, all of these things, that the quest for the shiny new toy is the least way to experience our lives. Or the words of my mentor, Reverend Forrest Church, want what you have. Reverence teaches us to value what is always before us. Want what you have. All of this is more than a philosophy to live by. It is a discipline. I can really relate to the feelings of exhaustion or trepidation the fellowship has struggled with through all of these transitions and challenges. I will share with you a similar story on a smaller scale. I call it what I did with my summer. I started a new job, moved out of my city where I lived for the last 10 years, got engaged. Feel free to clap or applaud. Thank you. And bought a new home. In some ways, it's all celebratory. In other ways, it was the most rigorous endurance run Ryan and I have ever experienced. The level of absurdity involved in trying to move out of a home, purchase another from a seller, who themselves are trying to buy a place to live from another person who's trying to sell and buy at the same time also. That's the edited version. And the MC Escher chain of commerce continues so on, is absolutely incredible. We can focus on our stuff being in a pod in front of our home we own but can enter while we're staying in a hotel room for 10 days that's smaller than a New York City studio, or we can appreciate that life is still pretty amazing, that we're employed, getting married, and have the ability to keep a roof over our heads. Which narrative we choose will define our day. And those choices are every day for each one of us. I stay centered through this, well, mostly centered, because of my spiritual practices. I try to stay open to the ebb and flow of crazy in my day, knowing that there's always a story hidden behind every challenge. The other person always has another story going on. The jerk that just cut us off has something else going on that has nothing to do with us. Maybe they're just bad drivers. I seek to remain mindful that this and that will someday pass. And I seek ways to appreciate the beauty in our world. For the past 16 years, I've honored a daily commitment to a walking meditation. It is the absolute rarest day, honestly, where I don't walk for at least 3 miles. The practice calms and centers me, along with reminding me that my soul is not defined by the work I do. I am not a machine here to accomplish things, but a spirit that is here to encounter other spirits. Often I feel like I don't have time to walk, though, but I follow the old rabbinical saying that goes something like, I pray every day for an hour, except for those days when I'm too busy. On those days, I prayed for 2 hours. As it happens, I also pray every day, but I promise you not for 2 hours. I would like to remind you of the words we began with in this service by Max Kapp, a UU minister, to light our chalice. Carry the sacred flame to make light in the windows of the world. It is we who must be keepers of the flame. It is we who must carry the imperishable fire. It is our watch now. It is our watch. Keeping the flame of progressive faith alive is not solely about social justice or being a voice for the oppressed or healing the pains of the world. It is all of these things for sure, and you will hear me talk about them most of the time. But it is also keeping our own inner flame alive, loved and vibrant. May we seek ways to practice the discipline of spirituality, and may we do so with gladness in our hearts and kindness on our lips. For to care for the world we live in, we must first care for our sagging shoulders and our weary grins, knowing that we never do so alone. For those who see God, may God be with us. For those who embrace life, may life return our affections. For those who seek a right path, may a way be found, and the courage to take it, step by step. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Amen.